when we look at yoga today, now yoga obviously it's becoming increasingly popular globally, but we also see a very reductionist and a very narrow understanding of yoga being propagated a lot. For example, yoga is it's like projected as some form of an exercise, like maybe dance or Zumba, and how problematic are such characterizations? And can you share with the youth in particular who are watching this about the need to realize that yoga is much more than just limited to asanas?
I have to say this. Yoga is a word which, as you said just now, while I'm happy that there is this International Yoga Day, thanks to various people who have initiated the process, and the United Nations also for taking up the advice given by the Prime Minister of India. Nobody said that before that to the UN. However, with all this Yoga Day and so on that's going on, people practice asanas. And yoga is not only asanas. You have to just go back to the Bhagavad Gita. Every chapter is called a yoga. Right. From Arjuna Vishada Yoga, first chapter, till the last chapter, which is Jnana Vijnana Yoga, or Sannyas Yoga, sorry. All the chapters have been described as yoga. So what could yoga actually be? It's an ancient science. Believe me, it's not, yoga didn't come into being with Patanjali. Right. Of course, Patanjali is the founder of the Yoga Darshana. Of the 6 darshanas, the last one is the Yoga Darshana. It is a modification in some way of the Sankhya system of Kapila, the ancient sage Kapila, who is so important that Krishna declares in the Gita, among the sages, Munis, I am Kapila. And yoga is 70% derived from Sankhya. And the Vedantis also use most of the words which have come from Sankhya, like gunas, samadhi. All these come from Sankhya. And it's a very scientific way of life. Sankhya in mathematics would mean sum, figure, Sankhya. Right. So, yoga, therefore, if you go back to the Krishna Yajurveda, it contains 20 to 21 Yoga Upanishads. The Upanishads are always at the end of the Samhita portions, which is why they are called Vedanta. Vedanta and the Samhita portion. So the Yoga Upanishads come as early as Krishna Yajurveda. And Yajurveda is only the second Veda, Rig Veda, Yajurveda. Right. So this ancient science has been with us for several thousand years. And it's not merely the asanas and the pranayams and the courses for corporate improvement, which have been, it's all fine. Yeah. It has its own impact, it has its own use, but that's not the essence of yoga. In the 12th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, called Bhakti Yoga, one of the few chapters in the Gita which starts with Arjuna Vovacha instead of Sri Bhagavan Vacha. Right? Arjuna has a question. Arjuna says, I'm saying this because you asked me about yoga. Yes. Arjuna says that some say that those who meditate upon the supreme, formless, nirmal, almost unreachable, abstract supreme Brahman, they are the great yogis. Some say that those who worship you as you are in your beauteous form are yogis. According to you, I'm ready to accept if you say. Because by then all his so-called logical structure has been demolished. Because you must remember that the previous 2 chapters, one is the chapter 10, where Krishna suddenly changes his record from being a dialogue between 2 friends and says, among the mountains I am Meru. Among the Muni, Arjuna is for a second wonderstruck. This guy, he's a good friend, brother-in-law, same age, talking to me like, like you and me talking together. And then suddenly he turns and says, I am this, I am that, wondering what is happening. So his so-called logic built on the inputs from the Indriyas is broken. And then comes the 11th chapter, Vishwarupa Darsana. Suddenly he sees that this man sitting in front of me driving the chariot envelops the entire universe and all the gods are coming out from him. Then Bhakti Yoga is introduced. Other people ask why it took so long to introduce Bhakti Yoga. So this is Arjuna's question. Who among them are the greatest of yogis? Beautiful. Krishna in his own way, diplomatic way, says it doesn't matter how you worship the Supreme Being. Great rishis worshipped it as abstract Brahman, fine, no problem. Some bhaktas worship with form. It doesn't matter what mode of worship. What matters is they should have certain attributes. If they have these attributes, I call them greatest of yogis. I would like to add a corollary saying greatest of human beings. And one of them is Samniyam Indriya Gramam. Those who have control over their senses, which also includes the mind. Senses meaning mind also. See, mind is made of thought, and thought comes from the inputs from the Indriyas. So, when someone has perfect control over one's emotions and one's senses, one qualification for being called a yoga, he's practicing yoga. Now, Ashtanga yoga, or the yoga which is seen in Patanjali's, subscribes to this notion and gives us ways and means to build this up. Because, so, yama niyamas, controlling your habits. And middle path, no extremes. In fact, Krishna beautifully described this yoga is not for him who eats too much or eats too little, or sleeps too much or sleeps too little. There is no formula. It's an attitude. Right? He describes this. Then, and asanas are done for physical well-being, plus all asanas have something to do with your endocrine system. Not just muscle. Yoga asanas are not for muscle building. Of course, minimum muscle building is there, but more to do with building the muscle of the mind. Mind muscle. And then you have the dharana, dhyana, samadhi, and pranayam to adjust your nadis and the prana that circulates through them. So it's a scientific step-by-step way, right, up to that. And without that, it is difficult to control your indriyas. So samniyam indriya, one who has control over his indriyas. But there have been people who have not done Ashtanga yoga, but who have had perfect control of the indriyas. You can't exclude them from this. What about the bhaktas who have not practiced, never stood on their heads? Well, I have. From the age of 10, I'm standing on my head. But there are. Ramakrishna Paramahamsa never practiced any physical yoga. So yoga is not just that. I'm trying to convey this. Okay. Then you come to the next quality which Krishna describes. Sarvatra samabuddhaya. One who through practice and understanding develops the capacity to keep his mind tranquil in the midst of all circumstances. No matter what the circumstances are, sarvatra sama buddhaya. The buddhi is kept sama. Okay, third quality, sarva bhuta hite rata, who has the welfare of all living beings in his heart. Includes human beings also, of course. But He says, if these three qualities are there, that person I called a great yogi. And then he equates the word yogi with bhakta and says, Yaha bhakta same priya, such a bhakta is dear to me. You see, this yoga is much wider than just a couple of asanas and pranayam. It is the way by which, even according to Patanjali, the mind's thoughts are stilled. Chitta vritti nirodha is the definition. After saying Atha Yoga Anushasanam, he says Yogas Chitta Vritti Nirodha. And note, no asanas are included in the Yoga Sutras. If you want to study, he mentions asana, saying Sthira Sukham Asanam. But if you want to go, then you have to look at other books like Yoga Pradipika, Garanda Samhita, Shiva Samhita, Goraksha Sataka. There are other texts. So, yoga is basically a way of life by which you keep your mind tranquil. You don't have to run away from the world. Remember, it was preached in the battlefield of Kurukshetra. This battlefield of life is before us all the time. Staying here, can we keep our minds calm? When the mind is calm, it becomes the tarmac from which you take off to the higher levels of consciousness, the essence of being, understanding which the Vedas declared Amritasya Putraha, who sons of immortality. What great treasure. What else can somebody give to the world? What we have. Think about it. This is yoga.
Please remember to subscribe to us and switch on the notifications for this channel. For our other social media links, more content, and to support our work, please visit citti.net. Dhanyavad. Namaskar.